Legacy League, we're getting into the thick of it. Week 9 is when things get real. All the wins, all the losses, all the points, they all are going to count up. I'm seeing a lot of tying and tie breaking and seeing how that's all breaking down. So we are going to get right to the action. However, between when the games happened in Week 9 this past weekend and right now when I'm filming, I did actually have a birthday, meaning I'm getting older and grumpier. Speaking of older, grumpier, and complaining, here's the Week 9 NFL recap. Back in 2006, then Arizona Cardinals head coach Dennis Green was known for saying, "They are who we thought they were." If you haven't seen that quote in a while or that clip, go check it out on YouTube. It's still there. The press conference, the slamming afterwards, and then the just walk off when the guy who was supposed to be running the room said, "Thanks, coach," and he just stormed out. Now, you can look at the context of that. I don't want to talk about that at all, or the Bears, weirdly enough, or really even the Cardinals. But I do want to talk about that quote because it kept coming back into my head all week long when I was actually watching the games, and then I was reflecting on them afterwards. They are who we thought they were. This really shows the big games, the huge matchups this week kind of did go as either I kind of expected or a lot of people expected going in, or maybe how people thought it was going to go at the beginning of the year. For example, the Chiefs and the Dolphins played early. It was wonderful over here. Selfishly, I know some North American people weren't super happy about the earliness of that game, but to have a game mid-afternoon is always super fun. We get one more week of it, I think, next week, and that's about it. But the Chiefs and the Dolphins, this is a big one. Normally the overseas games are crap. This is two great teams. Both, they are who we thought they were. The Chiefs are hella talented in terms of their defense being fantastic, their quarterback and tight end being best in the position probably, but the receivers being garbage. So what happens? A couple early successful drives, Kansas City does their magic, and then they just hang on for good measure. Their defense ends up having to score one of the touchdowns on an offense that used to be the most prolific in the league in terms of the Chiefs I'm talking there. But they need receivers. We know this. They're going to do really, really well, and they're going to go really far. But at the end of the day, when they bump into a team that can stop them, they're screwed because they can't do anything else. The Dolphins, put them in the same category as the Bills, who I thought they were two good teams, but not great teams. So they beat up on the mediocre and the lesser teams. Well, the Bills sometimes drop the ball there, but they can't beat the big team. Right? Both of them bumped into good teams, and they both fell short. Yes, the Dolphins' offense is electric when they're playing against crap defenses because they're just 10 times faster. But when they're against a good defense or a good defensive schemer, they seem to struggle so far. Now, their record's still going to be great because they play a lot of mediocre teams. But even when they bumped into a team like the Bills, they couldn't find an answer. Now, I do expect that to flip later on, but we'll leave it at that. Bills, same. Whenever they bump against someone who can bump back, they don't seem to really have it yet this year. Who do they bump into? A team from the NFC North. What did I think the NFC North was going to be this year? Hella tough. Now, the Steelers, I wouldn't say are tough, but look at their record. Surprisingly, they just stay in games. They play 5 good minutes at the end of the game. They end up squeaking it out somehow. The Browns, now that their quarterback sometimes just throws the ball downfield, they're going to be pretty unbeatable because their defense is amazing. Baltimore just dummied Seattle because, again, both teams are who I thought they were. Baltimore actually being legit, and Seattle, another one of those teams that just beat up on the mediocre teams, and they play a lot of them in the NFC, so again, they're probably going to make the playoffs, and their record's going to be great, but when they bump into a good Baltimore team, there's not much they can do. But the big team, non-surprising, really, if you think about it, Cincinnati Bengals. Now, this is where I am frustrated living in a country where I do not know how to bet on futures. Look at, as of a couple weeks ago, the Bengals' odds to make the playoffs, the odds to win the North, the odds to win the AFC are still there. Look at what their offense looks like when they have a quarterback who, and this is by his words, when they asked Burrow what was so different about today, he's like, well, I can run now. He can walk. And their offense is going to be great. They came out and just took it to Buffalo. Again, not surprisingly, they are who they thought they were. That applies to the entire AFC North. In terms of other divisions, AFC West, now, the gem of that is obviously the 49ers. They're on a bye week. Their other 3 teams played and combined for 6 total points in this week. Now, they were supposed to be a weaker conference, but wow, was that even weaker than I expected. But it leads me to my I'm going to try my best not to go on a rant, but if we jump over to the South, another mediocre, probably or more consistent mediocre, because they don't have that 49ers, at least up top, division. And you look at a team like the Atlanta Falcons. Now, I know if you've been paying attention and if you've listened to a bunch of the videos I've done in the past, I often not so subtly take a swipe at the Falcons for who they draft and then how they use them. But if this isn't the epitome of that, I really don't know what is. Who were they playing this week? Well, the Minnesota Vikings. And if we know about the Vikings, Cousins goes down. They make a trade for Dobbs. But Dobbs isn't going to be ready. He's just showing up. So they throw this rookie out, and they figure he'll get us through 1 week, and then maybe Dobbs comes in. Sure enough, because the football gods hate this type of behavior, the rookie is smited. He is hurt after trying to be a hero, and Dobbs has to come in. Now, if you were watching that game, Dobbs had to run to the offensive line and ask them what the calls and the cadence were going to be. He didn't understand. He knows plays. Don't get me wrong. I'm not insulting the individual. He's an intelligent man. But every team has their way of calling things, and he doesn't know what that looks like in Minnesota. So he had to ask them for cadence calls. After the plays were being called, he was asking receivers, which one is that again? Because the guy doesn't even know the names of the receivers. He probably has to ask directions on how to get to the bathroom in the Minnesota facility himself. He goes out and gets safetied on the first drive. On his second drive, more successful. Third drive, throws a panic interception. This is a gimme game to the Falcons, but you already know how this ends up. Dobbs comes through like a superhero, makes fantastic plays, makes a bunch of amazing reads, and they end up taking down the Falcons. Now, if you are the Falcons, this has got to be embarrassing, and I'm going to have to go ahead and actually change a comment I made last week. If you didn't watch it, come on, man, watch my videos. But if you didn't watch it, I used the reference of Taylor Swift, and I said one of the most impressive things was her asking her friends. She obviously wasn't cheering right, and she wasn't really having, she just would celebrate and wave or talk to Kelsey's parents. But eventually her friends were like, hey, be a better sports fan here. Develop something. Gets a little cool handshake with, I think it's Brittany Mahomes. And obviously she's showing a learning curve there. I already complimented her last week, but I compared her to Derek Carr just because I wanted to show that video of him, or that picture of him staring angrily at the camera. I picked the wrong person. The person who needs friends is Arthur Smith. Now, if you don't know who Arthur Smith is, number one, if he had friends, he would not have that mustache. Just point blank. That's the end of the sentence. It's not even ironic. He's too old for it to be ironic, I think. He actually likes it. But number two, his claim to fame was he was the offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans when his offensive strategy was give the ball to Derrick Henry, who just hurts people, and by the third and fourth quarter, he'll be amazing. And so Tannehill looks good. The receiver he had at the time traded away from the Titans, and then now we know him as one of the best and most consistent receivers in the league. So he's an offensive genius. He goes to Atlanta and just does not know how to handle talent. And I've criticized it, but I can't find another way to really say it. On the goal line, first down, what's your first play? You have one of his receivers is hurt. Fair enough. He's got one of the best tight ends coming out of college in history. He's got a running back. They drafted 8th overall, who's supposed to be a generational running back talent, a nose for the end zone, and a phenomenal, probably generational athlete. First play, throws to the backup tight end, incomplete pass. Second, decides to do a sweep run, something a little more creative. Does he go to that generational running back? Does he go to the backup running back who had 1,000 yards last year, or someone like Cordell Patterson who makes plays? No, it's a sweep play to, again, the backup tight end that he messed up with in the first down. Then he finally, on the third down, does give the ball to the backup running back who gets stuffed, and they don't score. I don't get it. I don't understand. One of his defenses, he had 2 of them this week. If you caught them, if you want to look at dumb responses that coaches give, often it's in the college game. Someone like Debo Sweeney, when they're like, you make billions, well, multi-millions, and you're really upset that players get paid. And then he goes off on weird tangents about how it's okay because it's him. Those usually are the dumbest things we expect coaches to say in those situations. He is outdumbing everybody right now. The comment that, well, Bijan Robinson is so great, he's just a phenomenal decoy, and he changes the way the defenses kind of would play them. I don't know how to respond to that. Sure, yeah, he changes the defenses, but like Christian McCaffrey, do the 49ers think, as great as he is at, when we hand the ball off, we throw him out of the backfield and he just makes amazing plays and essentially makes us win games, maybe he'd be better if we just never gave him the ball. Michael Jordan was synonymous with success and winning championships, but imagine if he didn't want to score or play. Blows your mind, right? Maybe he would have been even better. I don't understand how reporters just keep a straight face. It blows my mind. Anyway, I'd love to tell you I'm over it. I'm not over it, but I'm going to shut up and move on because week 9 was hella important to all of the leagues. I mean, the actual league, sure, but why are we here? Our leagues. Huge swings. Teams are really starting to function. The playoff races are already starting to get going, and this week had a huge impact. So let's take a look at our weekly matchups. When you got the top or near the top going against the bottom. Sometimes you can expect a big uppercut, something to land, something to get the lower seeded player off to a good start. Sadly for Rennie, it looks promising if you just take a look at the screen right now. And actually, for Rennie, who's had a lot of quarterback issues with buys and injuries and having to start just awful running back or quarterbacks, look at his quarterbacks. They did fantastic. Combined, Dax was actually our quarterback 2, I believe, this week. But that's it. I don't know what happened. I mean, Kelsey had a stinker of a game. Had a couple. I mean, Palmer's out, dude. He's IR. Pierce got hurt just before. London got hurt, I believe, just before or during. And then everybody was just, I mean, you can't really go too much onto this one. Sorry, pal. Rennie, I hope you're hitting the waiver wire. Don't give up on us yet, pal. There's still lots of ball to be played. You did leave some on the bench, and I think next week you're going to be a little bit better by trying to get some people in. But make some moves. Stay with us. Not over yet, buddy. In terms of Gene, congratulations. You've been at the top, if not the top score week after week after week. You're really pushing for that number 1 seed, just waiting for Connor and Seamus to screw up a little bit, or maybe you can face them and go after it. But let's be honest, you had a good week. You got to be happy with your running backs. Taylor and Jacobs overperforming. Always nice. Jacobs was actually our running back 4, but bam, there it is. CJ Stroud came out, massive performance. Not much you're really going to say about that hasn't already been said, but 5 touchdowns. Come on, get out of there. Not only was he our quarterback 1, as you can see with quarterback 2 over here, he was our quarterback 1 by more than a couple touchdowns, so well done. But like I said, your running backs, even Mixon and Taylor, aside from Jacobs, did quite well. Everyone else was doing their part. Herbert underperformed for you, but I'd put up with Herbert underperforming if your other quarterback's going to perform like this. You did actually you left some points on the bench, even though you were a top spot. Not surprisingly, with Houston going off, Dell or Tank here had 2 of the touchdowns. He was actually our running back, or our wide receiver, 3. So you could have even spiked the ball harder on poor Rennie. Rennie, like I said, don't give up on us yet, pal. But Gene, taking off like a rocket. How high will you go? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Number 2 scorer for the week, bouncing back after some disappointing ones and getting themselves back into the playoffs, into the top 4. Congratulations, Woody here. Kind of had the lead for most of this and then just kind of pushed the gas. Poor Marco continues his streak of having the other team just completely go off with Matty here being our number 2 scorer overall. We'll take a second look here, and we'll see when I get to the next week's projections who will be facing Woody next week. You might be happy considering he's going to have a quarterback and a wide receiver on a bye. I would say tight end too, but he might be hurt. But Matty, congrats here, pal. Hurts was actually our quarterback 3, so just out of the top 2 that I'd mentioned before, and Eckler was our running back 5. That was it for your top 5 performances, but aside from Zay Flowers having a stinker and then Goddard getting hurt, everybody else just did what they should and then some, right? Maybe Tua didn't quite live up to the bill, but A.J. Brown's continued his consistency. Nico Collins didn't actually go off for as much as you'd think, considering what he did at the beginning of the year and how many touchdowns Houston actually scored, but I would take it. Showing your bench, as per usual, you left a lot on the bench, but that's because you got a deep bench. Stevenson did not have a phenomenal game, but he did have a phenomenal run, so he broke one clean. He would have probably helped you out a little bit, but you didn't need it. Marco, what can I say here, buddy? Dalton Schultz actually was our tight end 1. That is all. Garrett Wilson's your next bet on that one, and that's not fantastic. Now, you also left some stuff on the bench. You had our tight end 2 on our bench as well. One of the people I went off with and in my little intro there. And Madison, you got to be feeling good about the fact, no one's ever happy with injuries, but Madison will be the lone back, it looks like, in Minnesota for a bit. He got rid of his competition, so we'll see how that works. Although we do know Dobbs likes to use his feet, so let's see how that rolls on. Marco, will you continue your luck of allowing the other team to go off on you, or are you going to make your run? Now's the time. Week 10 is coming up. You still have time to make it back, but you were running out of weeks. Woody, congrats. Top 4 again. So you've resumed to the potential playoffs, and you're always scoring high, making yourself a tough one to take down. So best of luck next week. Just a few points behind our second highest scoring team is our first highest scoring team, and that is our first overall, tied with Gene with record, but not in points. Connor and Seamus hang on to the belt for at least one more week here with a huge win over Maxon. This was a massive underperformance. I thought this would be a little bit tighter. Now, I know Maxon had some issues, as we'll get to in a second, that he was dealing with this week. Certainly some buys he was not happy with, but 70 points, that's spiking the ball and then some. Similar to the last couple weeks, your running backs actually kicking you in the nards here. Even putting Moss in for your backup or your second quarterback option did not work. However, everybody else did just fine. Mahomes had a little bit of a lighter day, but CeeDee Lamb has continued his streak. He was our wide receiver 2, but actually the highest wide receiver because our wide receiver 1 was not played or owned by anyone at this point. And even all of your wide receivers, and you include your tight end in there, overperformed, and that's going to help you out certainly. On the bench, you didn't have much. This was actually a pretty big bye week for you guys as well. But you did leave Nakua out, which was smart in the end there because all your other receivers did quite well. Maxim, what can I say, buddy? Like I said, we scroll down. You certainly had a couple major people, a quarterback, your defense, and the best running back in the game were on a bye. Now, you did have some tight end issues in terms of the fact you put the wrong one in. Higbee here did not help you out. Ferguson would have made it a little bit more competitive. He was our tight end 4. Okay, so that would have been good for you to add. A lot of people thought Young was gonna have a bit of a bounce game here with Indiana, but unfortunately for him, that was not the case. Way more interceptions and not enough touchdowns. I'd say the other bit is really Chase. I really thought he was having a good week. I had him in another kind of league where you get to make some picks here. Really surprised me because Buffalo did have a great game. Cincinnati had a great game against Buffalo. I would have thought Chase would have scored in. But if you can say that Najee Harris is your MVP in any given week, come on, man, you're just not going to win. That was just an off week. Maybe you got it all out in the same system with Gabe Dave also getting a rare, healthy blank. He was not hurt. He did not leave the game early. He just didn't catch a ball. Here's hoping you can bounce back next week because you're just out of the top 4 right now, but you're still obviously in the hunt. And I say it every week, so I might as well say it again. Connor Sheamus, you still got the belt. You are number 1. In a week where there wasn't really a lot of good matchups, this was one of the better ones. The best one goes to the end. But normally what I'm saying in our top 2 or 3 is, oh, you played this person. You would have beat so many people. I was a winner. I had the 4th highest score. I do think Tim has a reason to be a little bit upset because there's some people he could have played to get a win this week. But for the most part, I think this week kind of fell a little bit more in uniform fashion. Certainly Tim's got to be upset because he was well over predicted, meaning he can be certainly happy, especially his quarterbacks were meant to have mediocre days. They both played just fine. Baltimore was our 5th highest scoring defense. You get 16 points on a defense, and that's 5th. This was a massive tight end, and defenses came out this week. Derrick Henry did not make the top 5, but who cares because he scored a lot of points. And Dotson actually now a couple weeks in a row that he's showing he's not super undependable. Maybe he's coming back to it. You did leave some points on the bench, primarily some running backs, which is usually a good sign. And if we take a look here, your boy Jefferson, he does have predicted points in week 11, so you might only have about another week or so if he's on pace to get your number 1 back in your rotation, which will certainly help you out. Cooper Kupp, though, I'd be a little concerned because now we got to be concerned about who's throwing the ball. For me, my wide receivers sucked. Now, mainly Downs left early. He's been actually really helpful for me, but he was hurt. Watson just has a quarterback who can't find him because even against Los Angeles, come on, man, the Rams suck. And you scored 20. You could have found him, but that was really my only concern. I also did have Jackson, who underperformed. But I had our running back 1 in white. My other running backs actually sucked. Going through player by player, how did I actually win? Wait, I got it. Tight end, flex, QBs were okay, but David Carr, come on. It's not something I'm going to bank on week by week. And then, of course, Cleveland. They were the number 3 highest scoring defense, but number 1 in terms of the ones people started. The Chargers and Indy, people did not start, but they did outscore Cleveland. But come on, man, 20 plus for my defense alone. Just over my predicted because I was either high or low on this one, hoping to have another bounce back or hoping to keep up that momentum next week, but maybe not have as many of the questionable in case I go up against one of these juggernauts. Because apparently, if you want to beat one of the top couple in this league, 150 is the minimum. But I'll take the W. It was just after my birthday weekend, so thanks for the gift, Timmy. You're still well in the hunt, as we've talked about each week. 4 and 5, you're just on that 500 bubble. You seem to win one, lose one, so that means I feel sorry for who you're going to play next week. And for me, top 3 in the league. I'm doing all right, still treading water. Let's see how it goes into next week. When I mentioned who Tim may have wanted to play, these two would have worked out. Jeff was our lowest winner, but still a winner. And actually, Dibbler, you're on fire now, a couple in a row. You've getting yourself out of the basement, and actually, I've done the math, you still can make the playoffs, so if you keep going, it'll be just fine. Rushke, unfortunately, had kind of a down week. You were a hit or miss. I mean, Allen was our quarterback 5, which is great. You look at Dalton Kincaid, in many weeks, this would be top 5 tight end. It wasn't. He actually wasn't top 6 tight end, but 16 points from your tight end, I think most people take it. And Gus the Bus kept driving along, which was great. You had some of your big guns, though. Dallas, Tyreek Hill, they're just not scoring for you right now. You didn't put a second quarterback in because you didn't trust Watson. I don't blame you, but he did have enough that he would have that would have been enough to usurp the 6 points here had you put him in. Instead, you put in Cooks, another Dallas person who just burnt you. So that Dallas game was really the bane of your existence. Dibbler, how did you do it? You did have a couple more in the top 5. Cooper was our wide receiver 3, and Cole Kmet was also our tight end 3. So there you go, 3 and 3. Actually, sorry, Cooper was 4. I apologize, but Kmet was 3. Everybody else, your running backs really let you down. I mean, I had the starting running back for Seattle, and you just don't run when you're down that much. And New Orleans, it was a pretty busy backfield, and especially if you consider that Taysom Hill, technically a tight end, but actually a goal line running back. You know, I think you've already dropped Williams, I'll be honest. I think I saw that, so I would understand why. Kansas City, though, your defense scores a touchdown, especially against Miami. They held their own, so well done there, sir. You both were dealing with a few bye issues, and if you're Dibbler, let's add bye and injuries to that. So, Jeff, you got to be loving the fact that Monty apparently is coming back this week. You got another running back who's been scoring huge, coming off of a bye week, a possible quarterback, tight end combo, and then we'll see what happens with Stafford. Who knows? Rushke, I mean, you know Watson's back in the hunt. I'm not sure when Fields is meant to come back, but another week it will be helpful. You do have Hopkins, who's gone off in the past, and then these 3 who've covered their bye week. So I will fully expect a few more points from each of you next week, unless you're playing me, in which case I hope for exactly this amount of points. But we'll see how that works out. So Kent, you're still in the mix, even after the tough loss. And Jeff, keep the winning coming, buddy. Let's see how far you can go. Before we get into week 10, quick look. As I mentioned, our top 3 are technically tied. I didn't actually say I was tied before because number 1, I thought it was tacky, but 2, I am way down in points, and both of them overscored me this week, so that didn't get any better. But what's nice is we got a little bit of a gap between 3 and 4 now. It's only 2 wins, and Woody's outscored me here, so I got to keep my eye on the prize there. But you see a lot of jumbling in the middle here. So 5 and 4, 5 wins, 4 wins, 3 wins. Rennie and Marco need to go on that run right away. Jeff needs to keep the party going. That's 2 in a row. Whew, 6 in a row, Marco. You just got to snap that to feel better about yourself. But everyone in this mix, we all know one of you is going to go for a run and make that push to make the playoffs, maybe even 2 of you. So let's see how that works out. But for us up top, we're just going to do our best to try and keep the buffer, because I would expect that a bye week issue is going to be coming up. We know week 10, big bye week. You got Kansas City, you got the Dolphins, you got the Rams, and you got the Eagles. So 3 out of those 4 offenses are heavily populated. I'd even say 4 out of 4. Surprisingly, even though the Rams don't necessarily have the most prolific offense, they have enough fantasy talent that it's going to ding us a bit. So how does this work itself out? I'd say a huge matchup between me and Kent, not just because it's me and then I care about it a lot, but that's obviously one that Maxim wants to win to narrow that gap. Can Jeff continue his run and get Maddie in a little bit more trouble? We all hope so we can keep him a game or 2 beneath us. Then we've got Rennie trying to take down the top. You got to cheer for the underdog on this one. Our 10 seed knocking out the 1 would be fantastic. And Rushke and Gene, I know it might seem like a lopsided match, but as we know with Kent, he's punched big already this year. Sometimes he's the high scorer out of nowhere. So, Gene, don't rest easy. And then we got a nice little battle in the middle here. Marco, who really needs to snap that losing streak against Tim, the battle of the middle school here. Maybe a side bet will be in order. Something to do with lunch duty. I don't know. I'll let you two figure it out. Either way, folks, like I said, big bye week. We got one more week in Germany. So paying attention to that. We got a real crap game on Thursday. So make sure we're paying attention to that as always. But as we get into the stretch, only a few weeks left of the regular season before we get to playoff time. So every week's going to count. Best of luck in week 10, gang.